When HOA rules turned toxic for families, Karen faked violations to evict me, so FBI exposed her $1 million scheme. You have 72 hours to vacate, or the sheriff will remove you. Karen's voice echoed through my living room as she waved a stack of fabricated violations in my face. Behind her, HOA President Barbara stood in my doorway, her face pale with shock. "Karen, what are you doing?" Barbara whispered. Karen spun around, air eyes wild. "Stay out of this, Barbara. This property is worth $1.8 million, and it's about to be mine." Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. It was March 2024 when I first noticed Karen watching my house. Not the casual glance of a neighbor admiring your garden. This was different. She would park her silver Mercedes across the street, engine running, just staring at my property for 20, sometimes 30 minutes at a time. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'd lived in Riverside Heights for 11 years. My husband Tom and I bought our 4-bedroom colonial when our twins were just 2 years old. Now they were 13, and this neighborhood had been the only home they'd ever really known. We had friends here, memories in every corner of our yard, and we'd finally paid off enough of the mortgage to feel like the house was truly ours. Karen Westbrook had moved into the neighborhood 2 years earlier. She lived 4 houses down in a massive modern farmhouse that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Everything about Karen screamed wealth and controlled her. Perfectly highlighted blonde hair, always styled in that sharp bob. Her designer athleisure, that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and that condescending smile she wore whenever she corrected someone. At first, I tried to be friendly. We all thief. But Karen had a way of making every conversation feel like an audit. Your mailbox could use a fresh coat of paint. She'd comment while jogging past. "I noticed your garbage cans were still out at 9:30 on Thursday morning. Pickup is at 7, you know? Has anyone mentioned that your lawn is looking a little patchy near the sidewalk?" Barbara Henderson, our HOA president, was the complete opposite. She'd been leading our community association for 6 years, and everyone adored her. Barbara was in her late 50s, with warm brown eyes behind her signature red reading glasses and a genuine smile. That made you feel like you were talking to a favorite aunt. She wore the same red blazer to every HOA meeting. She called it her president's jacket, and she knew every family in our 100-home development by name. "Don't let Karen get to you," Barbara told me one afternoon while we both picked up mail at the neighborhood cluster boxers. "She's been trying to get on the HOA board since she moved in, but nobody votes for her. Some people just need to feel important by pointing out everyone else's flaws." I laughed it off then. I wish I'd taken Barbara's words more seriously. The watching started in March, but the violations began in April. I came home from work on a Tuesday to find an official-looking notice stuck to my front door. The HOA logo was at the top, and the language was formal and threatening. "Notice of violation, first warning. Property address: 147 Maple Ridge Drive violation. Exterior paint color non-compliant with approved color palette as specified in Covenant Section 4.3. Fine, $250, if not remedied within 14 days. I stared at the notice in confusion. Our house was painted a soft sage green there, exact color we'd submitted for approval when we repainted 3 years ago. I still had the approval letter somewhere in my files. I immediately called Barbara. "That's strange," Barbara said, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. "I'm looking at your approval from May 2021 right now. Sherwin-Williams softened green. Reference number 6618. You're completely compliant." "Who signed this violation notice?" I looked at the signature line. The name was barely legible, but I could make out K. Westbrook HOA. "Compliance officer." "Karen signed it," I told Barbara. "Since when is she a compliance officer?" There was a long pause. "She's not," Barbara said slowly. "We don't even have a position called compliance officer. Sarah, I'm going to look into this." "Don't worry about that, Finn. It's completely invalid." 2 days later, I received another notice. This one claimed my landscaping violated the native species requirement in the HOA covenants. Fine, $300. Again, Karen's signature. Then came a notice about my window shutters being the wrong shade of white. Fine, $200. A notice about my porch light being too bright and creating light pollution. Fine, $400. A notice claiming my driveway had oil stains that violated aesthetic standards. Fine, $350. Within 3 weeks, I'd accumulated 7 fake violations, totaling $1,800 in fines. Every single one was signed by Karen, using that fake compliance officer title. Barbara was livid. She called an emergency board meeting and sent a formal letter to every homeowner stating that Karen Westbrook had no authority to issue violations, that all her notices were invalid, and that no fines would be collected. The letter was professional but firm, classic Barbara handling a problem with grace, but zero tolerance for nonsense. I thought that would be the end of it. I was so wrong. The real escalation started on a Saturday morning in early May. I was in my kitchen making breakfast when I heard shouting outside. I looked through the window and saw Karen standing in my front yard, taking photographs of my house with her phone. Tom went outside to ask what she was doing. "Documenting violations," Karen said without looking up from her phone. She was wearing white linen pants and a crisp blue button-down, the kind of casual outfit that probably cost $500. "Your gutter is sagging on the northeast corner. That's a violation. And I count 3 dandelions in your front lawn. That's a violation. And your house numbers are 0.5 inches too small according to the fire code reference in our covenants. That's a violation." "Karen, Barbara already told everyone you have no authority to issue violations," Tom said, trying to keep his voice calm. "You need to leave our property." Karen finally looked up, and the smile on her face made my blood run cold. "Authority? Ede. I don't need authority from that incompetent board. I have something much better. I have the law." She pulled a document from her designer handbag and thrust it toward Tom. "This is a lawsuit. I'm suing you, the and Barbara Henderson personally, for creating a hostile living environment, failing to enforce community standards, and diminishing my property value. My attorney will be in touch. You have 30 days to respond." Before we could respond, she turned and walked back to her Mercedes, her heels clicking on our driveway. Tom and I stood there in shock, holding a lawsuit that claimed $50,000 in damages. The entire document was filled with lies, allegations that our property was severely neglected, that we'd been issued dozens of legitimate violations we'd refused to address, and that our defiance of community standards had caused Karen severe emotional distress. Barbara came over that afternoon. I'd never seen her so angry. Her usual warm demeanor was gone, replaced by a steel determination I hadn't known she possessed. "This is harassment," Barbara said, reading through the lawsuit while sitting at our kitchen table. "Pure and simple harassment. Karen knows this case will be thrown out, but she also knows it'll cost you thousands in legal fees to defend yourself. She's counting on you to settle or give up." "Why?" I asked. "Why is she doing this to us? What did we do to her?" Barbara was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming on our kitchen table. "I don't think this is about you specifically," she said finally. "I think this is about your house." "Our house?" Barbara nodded slowly. "You have one of the largest lots in the neighborhood, almost half an acre. You're also on the corner with street frontage on 2 sides, and you're right at the entrance to the community. From a development perspective, your property is probably the most valuable in the entire HOA. A chill ran down my spine. "You think she wants our house?" "I think she wants to make your life so miserable that you'll sell," Barbara said. "And I think she's planning to be the buyer, probably through some kind of LLC, so you won't know it's her." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Karen's face when she handed Tom that lawsuit, that satisfied, predatory smile. Tom and I talked for hours about what to do. We could hire a lawyer to fight the lawsuit, but that would cost us at least $15,000, maybe more. We could try to sell and move, but we loved our home. Our kids loved this neighborhood. Why should we be driven out by someone's greed? The next morning, I was sitting in my home office trying to focus on work when I heard a car door slam. I looked out the window and saw a man in a suit taking photographs of my house. He was with Karen, and she was pointing at various parts of my property while he took notes on a clipboard. I went outside. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" The man looked up. He was young, maybe 30, with a nervous expression. "Property assessment," he said quickly. "I'm from Anderson Realty Group." "I didn't request a property assessment," I said. Karen stepped forward, that same cold smile on her face. "I requested it," she said. "As an HOA stakeholder, I have the right to have properties assessed when I believe they're impacting community values. It's in the bylaws." "That's not in any bylaws," I shot back. "And you need to leave my property. Both of you, now." Karen's smile widened. "We're on the sidewalk, which is public property, but if you're going to be difficult, we can always add trespassing to the lawsuit. Mark, make sure you note the aggressive behavior, very important for our case." The young man Mark looked uncomfortable, but kept writing. I went back inside, my hands shaking with anger and fear. I called Barbara immediately. "She's completely out of control," Barbara said after I explained what happened. "This isn't normal neighbor conflict anymore, Sarah. This is calculated harassment with a clear goal. I'm going to contact my nephew. He's a real estate attorney in Denver. We need professional advice on what's really going on here." 2 days later, Barbara called me with news that made everything suddenly make terrible sense. "My nephew did some research," Barbara said, her voice tight. "Anderson Realty Group isn't just any real estate company. They're a development firm specializing in luxury residential subdivisions. And get this, they've been quietly buying up properties in neighborhoods like ours all over the state. They buy corner lots, demolish the existing homes, and build 2 or 3 luxury houses on the subdivided land." "Oh my God!" I breathed. "There's more," Barbara continued. "According to public records, Karen's husband is Eric Westbrook. He's a partner in Anderson Realty Group." Everything clicked into place. Karen wasn't just a difficult neighbor. She was part of a business scheme. She'd been watching our property because she and her husband wanted it for development. The fake violations, the lawsuit, the harassment was all designed to force us to sell. And once we were gone, they'd demolish our family home and build 3 luxury properties worth probably $600,000 each. "What do we do?" I asked Barbara. "We fight back," Barbara said firmly. "But we need to be smart about it. My nephew says what Karen's doing could be considered fraud and extortion. We need to document everything. Every violation notice she sends, every interaction, every threat. We're building a case, Sarah. And when we have enough evidence, we're going to take her down." I felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. "Okay," I said. "Tell me what to do." Barbara's plan was methodical. She created a shared digital folder where Tom and I could upload photos, documents, and notes about every interaction with Karen. She contacted other homeowners in the neighborhood to see if Karen had been targeting anyone else, and she quietly reached out to a reporter friend who specialized in real estate fraud stories. But Karen wasn't slowing down. If anything, she was escalating. The next fake violation claimed our fence was 6 inches over the property line and demanded we remove it immediately. Fine, $1,500. Then she filed a complaint with the city, claiming our tree was diseased and posed a danger to the neighborhood. The city arborist came out, examined our perfectly healthy oak tree, and told us the complaint was baseless. Karen started attending our kids' soccer games, sitting in her Mercedes in the parking lot, just watching. Not cheering, not participating, just watching. It was creepy and clearly meant to intimidate us. The breaking point came on a Friday evening in late May. Tom and I were having dinner with our kids when someone pounded on our front door. I opened it to find Karen standing there with 2 police officers. "These officers need to speak with you about the threatening messages you've been sending me," Karen said, her voice dripping with false concern. "What threatening messages?" I said, completely confused. One of the officers, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we received a report that you've been sending harassing texts and emails to Ms. Westbrook. Do you have your phone with you?" "Of course," I said, pulling out my phone. "But I haven't sent her anything. She's the one harassing us." I showed the officers my message history. No texts to Kara. No emails. Nothing. Kara pulled out her own phone, her face flushed with anger. "Right here," she said, showing the screen to the officers. 3 messages this week, alone. telling me to back off and leave the neighborhood. Look at the phone number, it's hers. The officer looked at the messages, then at my phone. He checked my number against the one in Karen's messages. His expression changed. "Mum," he said to Karen, "this number doesn't match. It's close, only 2 digits different, but it's not the same number." Karen's face went white. "That's impossible. Someone must have spoofed her number. She probably used an app to disguise it." The officer's voice became firmer. "Ma'am, filing a false police report is a serious offense. We're going to need to investigate this further. Please come down to the station tomorrow morning to provide a full statement." As the officers left, Karen turned to me, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. But then she composed herself, and that cold smile returned. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "Not even close. You have 72 hours to accept my husband's purchase. Offer we're prepared to pay $900,000, which is generous considering the condition of your property. After 72 hours, the offer expires, and we proceed with the full legal process. Your choice." She walked away, and I stood in my doorway, shaking with anger and fear. This woman had just tried to frame me for a crime, and was now giving me an ultimatum about my own home. That night, Barbara came over. She'd brought her laptop and several folders of documents. "I've been digging deeper," Barbara said, spreading papers across our dining room table. "Karen and her husband have done this before. Not exactly the same way, but similar patterns. There's a couple in Lakewood who sold their home to Anderson Realty after being hit with dozens of code violations that mysteriously disappeared once the sale went through. There's a family in Aurora who was sued by an HOA board member guess who owned the LLC that bought their property 6 months later. This is their business model," Barbara continued, her voice rising with anger. "They identify valuable properties, create artificial problems to force the owners to sell, then develop the land for huge profits. It's systematic. It's calculated, and it's probably illegal." "What can we do?" Tom asked. Barbara looked at both of us, her expression serious. "My nephew connected me with someone at the FBI's white-collar crime division. What Karen and her husband are doing might qualify as real estate fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. But we need solid evidence. Phone records, financial records, connection between the harassment and the development company. Are you willing to go all the way with us? Because once we contact the FBI, there's no turning back." Tom and I looked at each other. We'd lived in this house for 11 years. We'd painted every room, planted every tree in the yard, celebrated every birthday and holiday within these walls. Our kids had grown up here. This was our home, our sanctuary, our piece of the American dream. And we weren't going to let Karen Westbrook take it from us. "Call the FBI," I said. "What would you do if a neighbor tried to steal your home?" Drop a comment below. Previously, Karen Westbrook had been targeting my family's home with fake HOA violations and threats, all part of a scheme to force us to sell so her husband's development company could tear down our house and build luxury properties after she tried to frame me for harassment. Barbara and I decided to contact the FBI. The FBI field office in Denver was located in a nondescript building downtown. Barbara came with me for the initial meeting, her red blazer perfectly pressed as always. She squeezed my hand as we walked through the metal detectors. "Remember," Barbara whispered, "just tell them everything, exactly as it happened. The truth is on our side." Special Agent Michelle Torres was in her early 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper demeanor. She listened to our story for over 2 hours, taking detailed notes and occasionally asking questions that made me realize she already knew more than we did. "Anderson Realty Group has been on our radar for 6 months, Agent Torres said after we finished. "We've received complaints from 3 other neighborhoods in the Denver metro area. Similar patterns: harassment of homeowners, manufactured violations, pressure to sell. But we've never had someone willing to go on record before now. Everyone else either sold and left or was too scared to come forward. What exactly are they doing that's illegal?" I asked. Agent Torres leaned back in her chair. "If we can prove what we suspect, we're looking at multiple felony charges: real estate fraud, extortion, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly even identity theft, if they're impersonating HOA officials in writing. The Westbrooks have built an entire business model around forcing people to sell their homes at below-market prices under duress. That's textbook extortion. Barbara raised her hand slightly, like she was back in school. "What do you need from us?" "Everything you have," Agent Torres said. "Every fake violation notice, every text message, every email, photos, videos, witness statements from neighbors. We also need you to continue documenting any contact with Karen Westbrook." "I know that's going to be difficult, but the more evidence we can gather, the stronger our case." She slid a business card across the table to each of us, "And I need you both to be prepared. Once we move forward with this investigation, things could get worse before they get better. Karen Westbrook is going to realize she's under scrutiny. People in her position often escalate their behavior when they feel cornered." I felt a chill run down my spine. How much worse can it get? Agent Torres's expression was sympathetic, but serious. "I can't answer that, but I can promise you that we'll be monitoring the situation. If, at any point, you feel unsafe, you call me immediately, day or night." We left the FBI office with a mix of hope and anxiety. Barbara drove us back to the neighborhood in her silver Subaru, and I noticed her checking the rearview mirror more than usual. "Do you think we did the right thing?" "Primera," asked. Barbara didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. What Karen's doing isn't just illegal, it's evil. She's destroying families, destroying lives, all for money. Someone has to stop her." Agent Torres was right about one thing: Karen did escalate, but none of us were prepared for how fast it would happen. 2 days after our FBI meeting, I received a registered letter from a law firm I'd never heard of. Inside was a notice of foreclosure on my home. According to the document, I owed the HOA $23,800 in unpaid fines and fees, and the HOA was exercising its right to foreclose on my property. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the words. $23,000. We didn't owe the HOA anything. Every legitimate HOA fee we'd ever received, we'd paid immediately. I called Barbara, who immediately called an emergency HOA board meeting. All 5 board members showed up at Barbara's house that evening, and I brought every piece of documentation I had. "This is a complete fabrication," said David Chun, the HOA treasurer. He was a retired accountant in his 60s who kept meticulous records. "According to our official books, Sarah and Tom Mitchell owe exactly $0. Their last HOA payment was $300 on April 1st, and it cleared our account on April 3rd. I have the bank statement right here." "Then where did this foreclosure notice come from?" asked Jennifer Lopez, the HOA secretary. She was a young lawyer who worked in family law downtown. Barbara examined the letterhead on the foreclosure notice. "Hamilton and Associates, attorneys at law. Does anyone recognize this firm?" Jennifer pulled out her phone and started typing. After a minute, her face went pale. "This law firm doesn't exist. The address listed here is a UPS store mailbox. The phone number goes to a disconnected voicemail. This entire thing is fake." "Karen," I breathed. Barbara nodded grimly. "She's creating fake legal documents now. That's forgery. That's mail fraud. Sarah, you need to call Agent Torres right now." I called Agent Torres from Barbara's living room. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear other voices and keyboard typing in the background. "Sarah." "What?" "Append." I explained about the fake foreclosure notice. There was a long pause. Then Agent Torres said something to someone else in her office. When she came back on the line, her voice was urgent. "Don't touch that document anymore. Put it in a plastic bag. Use gloves if you have them. We're going to need it for evidence." This is exactly the kind of escalation I was worried about. Fake legal documents constitute mail fraud and forgery, which are federal crimes. "I'm going to expedite our investigation." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means we're moving faster than usual. I'm getting a warrant for Karen and Eric Westbrook's financial records, phone records, and email accounts. We're also going to interview the other homeowners who've dealt with Anderson Realty Group. But Sarah, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Do not engage with Karen Westbrook directly. If she approaches you, walk away. If she sends you messages, do not respond. Forward everything to me, but do not react. The moment you confront her, she's going to know we're investigating, and that could compromise everything. Can you do that? Yes, I said, though every fiber of my being wanted to march down to Karen's house and confront her. The next few weeks were the most stressful of my life. Karen seemed to sense something had changed. She stopped sending fake violation notices, but her surveillance increased. Her Mercedes was parked across from our house almost every day. She started attending HOA board meetings, something she'd never done before, and sitting in the back row, just watching and taking notes. Barbara handled it with her usual grace. At one meeting, when Karen demanded to see the HOA's financial records, Barbara smiled sweetly and said, "Of course, Karen, as a homeowner, you have that right. I'll have copies made and mailed to you within 5 business days, as specified in our bylaws." But I could see the strain on Barbara, too. She'd lost weight, and the circles under her eyes were getting darker. One afternoon, I found her sitting on a bench at the neighborhood park, just staring at the playground. "Are you okay?" I asked, sitting down beside her. Barbara sighed. "I've been HOA president for 6 years. In all that time, the biggest conflict I ever dealt with was 2 neighbors arguing over a fence. Now I'm involved in an FBI investigation. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just let Karen get away with it." "Don't say that," I said firmly. "If we'd let her get away with it, she'd just move on to the next family. How many other people would lose their homes?" Barbara nodded slowly. "You're right. I know you're right. It's just hard. You know, I thought being HOA president meant organizing the 4th of July barbecue and making sure everyone paid their dues. I didn't sign up for this. But you're doing it anyway," I said. "That's what makes you a good person, Barbara. You stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. "When this is all over, I'm retiring as HOA president. I'm going to spend my days gardening and reading mystery novels, and never, ever dealing with neighborhood drama again." We both laughed, but there was an edge of hysteria to it. The stress was getting to all of us. Then, in early July, Agent Torres called with an update. "We've executed the warrants," she said. "We have Karen and Eric Westbrook's emails, texts, and financial records going back 3 years. Sarah, what we found is worse than we thought." "How bad?" "They've done this to 17 families across Colorado. 17 homes they've acquired through harassment, fake legal documents, and manufactured crises. We found a literal instruction manual on Eric Westbrook's computer, a step-by-step guide on how to identify target properties, create pressure campaigns, and force sales. They call it strategic acquisition. We call it a criminal enterprise." I felt sick. 17 families. And those are just the ones we can prove. There may be more. We also found email correspondence between Karen and several fake law firms. She's been hiring people to create fraudulent legal documents for years. The fake foreclosure notice you received. There are templates for those on their shared drive, templates for fake code violations, fake lawsuits, fake HOA documents. This is an organized, systematic operation. What happens now? Primera. Asked? "We're preparing to make arrests," Agent Torres said. "But I need you to be ready for something. When we arrest Karen and Eric, there's going to be a lot of attention. Media attention. Your story is going to be very public. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to hide, to keep everything private. But another part of me, the angry, protective part that wanted justice, knew that publicity was important. Other families needed to know what the Westbrooks had done. Other people needed to be warned. "I'm ready," I said. "Good. We're moving in 3 days. Friday morning, I'll call you as soon as it's done." Those 3 days felt like 3 years. I barely slept. Tom and I kept the kids busy with activities, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. Barbara texted me every few hours, just checking in. On Thursday night, she sent a simple message. Tomorrow, justice. Friday morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee when I heard the siren. At first, I thought it was just an ambulance passing by. Then I looked out the window and saw 3 black SUVs pulling up to Karen's house. Agents in FBI windbreakers were getting out of the vehicles. I watched, my heart pounding, as Agent Torres walked up to Karen's front door and knocked. Karen opened the door in her designer athleisure, her hair still wet from a shower. I couldn't hear what Agent Torres said, but I saw Karen's face go white. She tried to close the door, but an agent blocked it with his foot. Within minutes, both Karen and a man I assumed was Eric Westbrook were being led out of the house in handcuffs. Karen was shouting something, her face red with anger and fear. Eric looked stunned, like he couldn't believe this was happening. I stood at my window, watching the black SUVs drive away, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. It wasn't over yet. There would be trials, testimonies, more stress, but the immediate threat was gone. Karen couldn't hurt us anymore. My phone rang. It was Barbara. "Are you watching?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm watching," I said. "We did it, Sarah. We actually did it." "We did," I agreed. "Barbara, I couldn't have done this without you. You saved our home. You saved our family." Barbara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger. "That's what neighbors do, Sarah. We look out for each other. That's what community really means." Agent Torres called me an hour later. Karen and Eric Westbrook are in custody. They're being charged with 17 counts of extortion, 19 counts of wire fraud, 12 counts of mail fraud, 8 counts of forgery, and conspiracy to commit all of the above. If convicted on all charges, they're each looking at up to 45 years in federal prison. 45 years, I repeated, stunned. Federal crimes carry serious sentences, Agent Torres said, and the Westbrooks committed a lot of them. There's also the matter of civil restitution. They're going to have to pay back all 17 families they We're talking millions of dollars. That evening, Barbara organized an impromptu neighborhood gathering in the community park. Word had spread fast about the arrests, and almost everyone showed up. People brought food and drinks, and there was a feeling of collective relief in the air. Barbara raised her glass of lemonade and called for everyone's attention. She was wearing her red blazer, her red glasses catching the evening sun. "I want to say something," Barbara announced. "Today, we learned that someone in our community was deliberately trying to hurt one of our families. But we also learned something more important. When we stand together, when we support each other, we can overcome anything." Sarah and Tom refused to be victims. They fought back. And I'm proud to be part of a community with that kind of courage. Everyone applauded. Tom squeezed my hand, and our kids looked at us with a mixture of pride and relief. But as the celebration continued, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the parking lot, partially hidden behind a van, was Karen's silver Mercedes, and sitting in the driver's seat, watching us through the windshield, was a woman I didn't recognize. She raised a phone and took several photos of the crowd. Then she made eye contact with me, smiled coldly, and drove away. I immediately called Agent Torres. "Someone was just here in Karen's car," I said, my voice shaking. "A woman I've never seen before. She was taking photos of all of us." There was a pause. Then Agent Torres said something that made my stomach drop. "Sarah, can you describe this woman? Blonde, early 40s, expensive-looking clothes." "Why?" Another long pause. "That sounds like Patricia Westbrook, Eric's sister. And according to the documents we seized, she's not just family, she's a silent partner in Anderson Realty Group." Just when you think it's over, the plot thickens. Did you catch that twist? Drop your theories in the comments. Previously, Karen and Eric Westbrook were arrested by the FBI for running a real estate fraud scheme that had destroyed 17 families. But just as we celebrated, a mysterious woman appeared in Karen's car. Patricia Westbrook, Eric's sister and silent partner in the criminal enterprise. The weekend after Karen and Eric's arrest should have been peaceful. Instead, I spent it jumping at every sound, checking the windows constantly, wondering when Patricia would make her move. Agent Torres had warned us that Patricia was potentially more dangerous than Karen. Karen was the face of the operation, she explained over the phone on Saturday morning. She did the harassment, the intimidation, the direct contact. But Patricia, she's the one who created the business plan. She's the one who found the legal loopholes. She's smart, Sarah, and she's motivated. If we convict Karen and Eric, their assets get seized, which means Patricia loses her investment. So what does she want? I asked. Probably to intimidate you into not testifying, maybe to destroy evidence, possibly to continue the harassment campaign and force you to sell anyway. We don't have enough to arrest her. Yet she's been careful to keep her involvement hidden, but we're watching her. If she makes contact with you, call me immediately. Barbara came over that afternoon with a casserole and her trademark determination. She was still wearing her red blazer, despite the summer heat. I've been thinking, Barbara said as we sat on my back patio. Patricia showing up like that was a message. She wants us to know she's still out there. She wants us to be scared. Well, it's working, I admitted. I'm terrified. Barbara reached over and squeezed my hand. That's normal. But here's what we're going to do. We're not going to hide. We're not going to let her control us with fear. We're going to live our lives, document everything, and let the FBI do their job. You make it sound so simple, I said with a weak laugh. It's not simple at all, Barbara said, her voice softening. But it's necessary. These people tried to take your home. They tried to destroy your family. We're not letting them win. Patricia made her first real move on Monday morning. I was getting ready for work when my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sarah Mitchell. The voice was smooth, professional, with just a hint of menace. This is Patricia Westbrook. I believe you've been causing problems for my family. My hand tightened on the phone. Your family is in jail for fraud and extortion. Alleged fraud, Patricia. They haven't been convicted of anything. And between you and me, they won't be. My brother and sister-in-law made some mistakes. Sure, but the charges are overblown. The FBI is trying to make an example of successful business people. It's tragic, really. I started recording the call on my phone. What do you want, Patricia? I want to help you, she said. And I could hear the smile in her voice. You're in a difficult position. You're going to be asked to testify against my family. That's going to be stressful, time-consuming, and very public. Your children will see their mother on the news, talking about all this unpleasantness. Your neighbors will gossip. Your life will be dissected in court. Get to the point, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I'm prepared to offer you $1,200,000 for your property. Patricia sighed. That's significantly above market value. You can take the money, move somewhere nice, start fresh. No trial, no testimony, no stress, just a clean break and a very generous profit. You're trying to bribe me? I'm offering you a fair deal. Patricia sighed, her voice hardening slightly. But fair deals have expiration dates. You have 48 hours to accept. After that, things get much more complicated for you and your family. Is that a threat? It's a warning, Patricia said. Karen approached things emotionally. She let her frustration show. I don't make that mistake. I'm a businesswoman, Sarah. And in business, you need to understand leverage. Right now, you think you have leverage because the FBI arrested my family, but I have leverage too. I know where your children go to school. I know where your husband works. I know that your mother lives in that assisted living facility in Boulder. These are just facts, Sarah. Not threats, just facts. My blood ran cold. She was threatening my family, my children, my elderly mother, all, while maintaining plausible deniability. I'm recording this call, I said, and I'm going to give it to the FBI. Patricia laughed. By all means. I haven't said anything illegal. I made a business offer and stated some publicly available facts. But good luck explaining to your children why you turned down over $1 million and chose to keep them in the middle of a federal case instead. 48 hours. Sarah, think carefully. She hung up. I immediately called Agent Torres and sent her the recording. "She's good," Agent Torres said after listening. "Everything she said is technically legal. The offer to buy your house isn't a crime. Mentioning facts about your family isn't a crime, even though we both know what she was implying. But this recording does two things for us. First, it establishes that Patricia is involved in this scheme. Second, it shows a pattern of witness intimidation. Keep recording everything." That night, Tom and I had a serious conversation. We sat in our bedroom after the kids went to sleep, and for the first time, I saw real fear in my husband's eyes. "Maybe we should consider the offer," Tom said quietly. $1,200,000. "Sarah, that's enough to buy a bigger house in a better neighborhood. That's college funds for both kids. That's retirement security." "She threatened our children," I said. "I know," Tom said, running his hands through his hair. "And that's exactly why I'm worried. If we testify, if we fight this, what's she going to do? She's already shown she's willing to go after families. What if something happens to the kids? What if—" "Stop," I said, taking his hands. "Listen to me. If we take that money, we're letting them win. We're saying that people with money and lawyers can just terrorize families and get what they want. Is that the lesson you want to teach our kids? That we run when things get hard?" Tom was quiet for a long moment. "I want to protect our family." "So do I said. "And the best way to protect them is to make sure the Westbrooks go to prison where they can't hurt anyone else." The next morning, I called Patricia back and told her exactly where she could put her offer. I won't repeat my exact words, but let's just say I made myself very clear. Patricia's response was chilling. "I gave you a chance to do this the easy way," she said. "Now we do it my way." The harassment started that same day. It was different from Karen's approach, more subtle, more psychological. Someone ordered 20 pizzas to our house. Our credit cards were suddenly declined everywhere, and when we called the banks, they said someone had reported them stolen. Tom received emails at work claiming he was being investigated for embezzlement. Our kids' school received anonymous tips that we were neglecting them. Every single claim was false, but dealing with each one took hours of phone calls, explanations, and stress. It was death by 1,000 cuts, and Patricia's fingerprints were nowhere to be found. Barbara was dealing with her own problems. The HOA's bank account was suddenly frozen due to suspicious activity. She received official-looking letters claiming she was being sued for discrimination. Someone filed complaints with the state claiming she'd embezzled IHOA funds. We met at a coffee shop downtown, both of us exhausted and frustrated. "She's trying to break us," Barbara said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "Every day, there's something new. Yesterday, someone filed a complaint saying, 'My house is a health hazard.' Today, my car insurance was canceled because someone reported that I have dozens of unpaid traffic tickets. It's all lies. But proving it's lies takes time and energy I don't have." "Agent Torres says it's witness intimidation," I said. "She's building a case against Patricia, but it takes time." "I don't know how much more time I have," Barbara admitted. "I'm losing sleep. I'm losing weight. My doctor says my blood pressure is dangerous. Sarah, I want to fight, but I'm 63 years old. I'm tired." Seeing Barbara strong, capable Barbara looking so defeated broke something in me. This woman had stood up for us when she didn't have to. She'd risked her own peace and safety to fight for what was right. And now, she was suffering because of it. "We're going to end this," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "Patricia thinks she's untouchable because she's careful, but everyone makes mistakes. We just need to catch her making one." "What are you thinking?" Barbara asked. "I'm thinking we give her exactly what she wants," I said. "We set a trap." After getting approval from Agent Torres, we put the plan in motion. I called Patricia and told her I was ready to negotiate. I said the harassment was too much, that my family couldn't take it anymore, that I wanted to discuss her offer. Patricia agreed to meet me in person. "No lawyers," she said. "Just you and me, having a conversation about what's best for everyone." We agreed to meet at a restaurant downtown on Thursday afternoon. What Patricia didn't know was that I'd be wearing a wire and Agent Torres would be listening from a van in the parking lot. The morning of the meeting, I was a nervous wreck. Tom helped me get dressed, and Barbara came over to give me a pep talk. "You can do this," Barbara said, straightening my collar where the tiny microphone was hidden. "Just get her talking. Get her to admit she's been harassing us. Get her to threaten you. That's all the FBI needs." "What if she realizes I'm recording?" "Primera. Askiv, then Agent Torres will be there in 30 seconds, Barbara said firmly. She adjusted her red glasses and smiled. "I'll be in the restaurant too, at a table on the other side. You won't be alone." The restaurant was an upscale Italian place with white tablecloths and soft lighting. Patricia was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a glass of wine. She looked exactly like Karen, but older, same sharp features, same calculated smile, same designer clothes that screamed wealth. "Sarah," Patricia said warmly as I sat down, "I'm so glad you came to your senses. This is much better than dragging things out through the courts, don't you think?" "I need guarantees," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "If I sell, the harassment stops. All of it. No more credit card issues, no more problems at my kid's school, no more fake complaints." Patricia took a sip of wine. "Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't been harassing you." "Come on, Patricia. We both know it was you. The pizzas, the credit cards, the complaints. Karen's in jail. Eric's in jail. Who else would it be?" Patricia smiled, but her eyes were cold. "You know, Karen always said you were stubborn. She said you didn't know when to accept a good deal. Maybe she was right. So, you admit you've been working with Karen." "I admit my sister-in-law shared her frustrations with me," Patricia said carefully. "I admit that I think she and Eric were treated unfairly. And I admit that I saw an opportunity to acquire a valuable property that will generate excellent returns once it's properly developed. By tearing down my home and building luxury houses," I said. "By maximizing the use of valuable land," Patricia corrected. "That's not a crime, Sarah. That's business. And business is about leverage. Right now, I have all the leverage. Your life is chaos. Your husband is stressed. Your children are being affected. Your elderly mother don't," I said sharply. "Don't mention my family." Patricia leaned forward, her smile turning predatory. "Why not? They're very much part of this equation. See? I learned something from watching Karen's mistakes. She got emotional. She threatened people openly. She left evidence everywhere. I'm much more careful." She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was my daughter, Emma, walking out of her school that morning. "Beautiful girl," Patricia said softly. 13 years old. Right. Such a vulnerable age. Anything could happen at that age. Kids get bullied. They get depressed. They make poor choices. It would be terrible if something were to happen to her. My hands clenched under the table. "Are you threatening my daughter?" "I'm stating facts," Patricia Said, echoing her earlier phone call. "Adolescence is dangerous. Accidents happen. Schools can't watch every student every minute. These are simply observations. Sarah. Not threats." She swiped too. "Another photo, this one, of my mother's assisted living facility. Senior facilities can be problematic too. Medical mistakes, falls, medication errors. Your mother is 78, isn't she?" "At that age, anything could stop," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Just stop. Then sell me your house," Patricia said flatly. "Sign the papers, take the money, and move somewhere far away. Don't testify against Karen and Eric. Don't cooperate with the FBI. Just disappear. That's the deal. And if I don't," Patricia's smile vanished, "then I make your life a living hell. Worse than what Karen did. Worse than anything you can imagine. I have resources, Sarah. I have connections. I can make problems appear that'll take years to resolve. I can make sure your husband loses his job. I can make sure your children become social outcasts. I can make sure your mother's care becomes inadequate. And I'll do all of it in ways that can never be traced back to me." She leaned back, satisfied. So what's it going to be? The easy way or the hard way? I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. I choose the third way, I said. Patricia frowned. What third way? The one where you go to prison, I said, and I tapped the microphone hidden in my collar. Patricia's face went white as Agent Torres and 3 other FBI agents walked into the restaurant. Across the room, Barbara stood up from her table, a look of pure triumph on her face. Patricia Westbrook, Agent Torres said, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for witness intimidation, conspiracy to commit extortion, and making terroristic threats. You have the right to remain silent. ... double quotes. As the agents led Patricia away in handcuffs, she turned to look at me one last time, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine fear in a Westbrook's eyes. Patricia walked right into the trap. But this story isn't over. Yet the final courtroom showdown is still coming in the final moments of this video. What do you think Patricia's sentence should be? Comment below. Previously, Patricia Westbrook was arrested after threatening my family in a recorded conversation with the FBI listening. All 3, Westbrooks, Karen, Eric, and Patricia, were now in custody. Now came the trial that would determine their fate. The months between Patricia's arrest and the trial were surprisingly peaceful, with all 3 Westbrooks in custody and unable to make bail due to flight risk concerns. The harassment stopped completely. Our credit cards worked again. The fake complaints disappeared. Our lives slowly returned to normal. But we all knew the real battle was still ahead. The trial was scheduled for November, and Agent Torres warned us it would be intense. The Westbrooks had hired one of the most expensive defense attorneys in Colorado, a man named Marcus Pemberton, who specialized in getting wealthy people out of white-collar crime charges. Barbara and I spent countless hours preparing our testimonies with the prosecutors. They were 2 sharp young attorneys from the U.S. Attorney's Office, David Ramirez and Jennifer Wu. Both were in their 30s, brilliant, and absolutely committed to making sure the Westbrooks went to prison. The evidence is overwhelming. David told us during one of our prep sessions. We have the fake violation notices, the fraudulent legal documents, the recorded threats, the financial records showing the pattern across 17 families. But here's what's going to happen. In court, Pemberton is going to try to paint you and Barbara as vindictive neighbors who conspired to frame innocent business people. He's going to claim everything was a misunderstanding. How do we fight that? I asked. Jennifer smiled. By telling the truth, juries can spot liars. And you're not lying. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in November. The federal courthouse in Denver was an imposing building with marble columns and security that felt like an airport. Barbara and I sat together in the gallery, holding hands as the jury was brought in. Judge Margaret Thornton was a stern woman in her 60s, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. She had a reputation for running a tight courtroom and having zero patience for nonsense. I liked her immediately. When Karen, Eric, and Patricia were brought into the courtroom, I barely recognized Karen. The perfectly styled hair was gone, replaced by a simple ponytail. The designer clothes were replaced by a conservative gray suit. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. Eric looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. Patricia, however, looked defiant, her expression cold. The opening statements set the tone. David Ramirez laid out the prosecution's case methodically. 17 families, a systematic pattern of harassment and fraud, millions of dollars in illegal profits. He showed the jury photos of the fake documents, played recordings of threatening phone calls, presented financial records that proved the conspiracy. This isn't a story about a business deal gone wrong, David said, his voice carrying through the courtroom. This is a story about predators. The Westbrooks identified vulnerable families, terrorized them, and profited from their fear. They destroyed lives for money, and they did it deliberately, systematically, and without remorse. Marcus Pemberton's opening statement was slick and polished. He painted his clients as misunderstood entrepreneurs who'd made some procedural errors, but had no criminal intent. He claimed the harassment was exaggerated, the documents were misunderstandings, and that we were vindictive neighbors seeking revenge. My clients are not criminals, Pemberton said smoothly. They're business people who've been caught up in a witch hunt led by a disgruntled homeowner and an overzealous HOA president. The government wants you to believe there was some grand conspiracy. But the truth is much simpler. This is a civil dispute that's been criminalized. The first week of testimony was brutal. The prosecution brought in victim after victim families the Westbrooks had targeted. Each story was heartbreaking. A single mother who'd lost her home after months of harassment. An elderly couple who'd been forced to sell at a loss after Karen filed dozens of fake violations. A young family who'd gone bankrupt fighting fraudulent lawsuits. But it was Agent Torres's testimony that really changed the atmosphere in the courtroom. She walked the jury through every piece of evidence, the instruction manual found on Eric's computer, the templates for fake documents, the email chains showing the Westbrooks celebrating each successful forced sale. This document, Agent Torres said, holding up a printout, is titled Strategic Acquisition Protocol. It's a step-by-step guide written by Patricia Westbrook on how to force homeowners to sell. Step 1. Identify high-value properties. Step 2. Manufacture violations. Step 3. Escalate pressure through legal threats. Step 4. Offer to buy at below-market prices. This isn't business. This is extortion. When Pemberton cross-examined Agent Torres, she didn't budge. Every question he asked, she answered with facts and evidence. It was masterful. My turn to testify came on day 8 of the trial. I was terrified. Barbara squeezed my hand before I walked up to the witness stand. "Tell them the truth," Barbara whispered. "That's all you need to do." David Ramirez walked me through everything: the first fake violation, Karen's escalating harassment, the fake foreclosure notice, Patricia's threats. I told the jury about my daughter's photos on Patricia's phone, about the threats to my elderly mother, about the fear that had consumed our family for months. "Mrs. Mitchell," David said, "when Patricia Westbrook offered you $1,200,000 for your home, why didn't you take it?" I looked directly at the jury. "Because it wasn't a business offer. It was a ransom." She was demanding I give up my home, give up justice, give up my right to testify against criminals, or she would hurt my family. That's not a deal. That's terrorism. When Pemberton cross-examined me, he tried to make me look vengeful and greedy. He suggested I'd exaggerated the harassment, that I'd conspired with Barbara to frame his clients, that I was motivated by a desire for attention. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Mitchell, that you refused a very generous offer for your property simply out of spite?" "No," I said firmly. "I refused it because accepting it would mean your clients got away with destroying 17 families. I refused it because my home isn't for sale to criminals, and I refused it because someone needed to stand up to them." Barbara's testimony came the next day. She was magnificent, wearing her red blazer and red glasses. She calmly walked the jury through her role as HOA president, how she'd discovered Karen's fake compliance officer title, how she'd helped me document everything, and how she'd become a target herself. "I've been HOA president for 6 years, Barbara told the jury. "In that time, I've dealt with barking dogs, fence disputes, and people who forget to pay their dues. Normal neighborhood stuff. What Karen Westbrook did wasn't normal. It was calculated, malicious, and designed to destroy a family for profit. That's not a business dispute. That's evil." When Pemberton tried to suggest Barbara had a personal vendetta against the Westbrooks, she shut him down immediately. "I didn't even know the Westbrooks until this started," Barbara said. "I have no vendetta. I have a responsibility to protect the families in my community. That's what I did. That's what any decent person would do." The defense's case was weak. Eric Westbrook took the stand and claimed everything was a misunderstanding, that the instruction manual was just theoretical, that he'd never actually intended to hurt anyone. The jury looked skeptical. Karen didn't testify at all. Her lawyers probably knew she'd be demolished on cross-examination. Patricia did testify, and it was a disaster for the defense. She was cold, calculating, and utterly unrepentant. When Jennifer Wu played the recording of Patricia threatening my family, Patricia tried to claim it was taken out of context. But the jury had heard her own words. There was no context that could make those threats acceptable. The closing arguments were powerful. David Ramirez summarized the mountain of evidence, the pattern of abuse, the systematic targeting of 17 families. Jennifer Wu focused on the recordings, particularly Patricia's threats. "You heard Patricia Westbrook, in her own words," Jennifer told the jury. "She threatened a 13-year-old girl. She threatened a 78-year-old woman in an assisted living facility. She did this while offering money to make the witness disappear. That's witness intimidation. That's extortion. That's a federal crime." Pemberton's closing argument tried to create reasonable doubt, but you could tell he was grasping at straws. The evidence was just too overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Barbara and I spent those 48 hours in a state of constant anxiety. We met for coffee. We texted constantly. We couldn't focus on anything else. Finally, on a Thursday afternoon, we got the call. The jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom was packed when Judge Thornton called everyone back. Barbara sat on my right, Tom on my left. Our hands were intertwined so tightly I lost feeling in my fingers. The jury foreman stood, a middle-aged man in a blue suit who'd been taking notes throughout the entire trial. "In the matter of the United States versus Karen Westbrook, on the charge of extortion, how do you find?" "Guilty." "On the charge of wire fraud?" "Guilty. Guilty. Guilty. Guilty." "On every single count." "Eric Westbrook guilty on all counts." "Patricia Westbrook guilty on all counts, including the additional charges of witness intimidation and making terroristic threats." Karen let out a sob and collapsed in her chair. Eric stared at the table, his face dry. Patricia remained stone-faced, but I saw her hands shaking. Barbara and I hugged each other, both of us crying with relief. Tom wrapped his arms around both of us. Behind us, other victims of the Westbrooks were celebrating, some crying, some searing. Judge Thornton banged her gavel. "Order. Sentencing will take place in 30 days. The defendants will remain in custody until that time." Those 30 days crawled by. Finally, sentencing day arrived. The courtroom was once again packed with victims, reporters, and curious observers. Judge Thornton didn't hold back. She spent 20 minutes detailing the Westbrooks' crimes, the lives they'd destroyed, and the complete lack of remorse they'd shown. "The three of you," Judge Thornton said, her voice ringing with authority, "created a criminal enterprise designed to terrorize families and steal their homes. You did this not out of necessity, but out of greed. You had wealth, privilege, and opportunity, and you chose to use those advantages to prey on people who'd done nothing wrong except own property you wanted." She looked at each of them in turn. "Karen Westbrook, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. You will also pay restitution to all victims in the amount of $3,400,000. Karen broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. "Eric Westbrook, as the architect of this scheme and the head of Anderson Realty Group, you are sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. You will pay restitution of $4,200,000. Eric's head dropped to the table. "And Patricia Westbrook," Judge Thornton's voice became even harder, "you showed the most calculation, the most cruelty, and the least remorse. Your threats against a child and an elderly woman were particularly heinous. You are sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, followed by 7 years supervised release. You'll pay a restitution of $5,800,000. Patricia's face finally showed emotion, pure shock and fear. Additionally, Judge Thornton continued, "Anderson Realty Group is hereby dissolved, and all its assets will be seized to pay restitution to the victims. The 17 properties you fraudulently acquired will be returned to their original owners or their estates. This court has zero tolerance for predators who use the legal system as a weapon against innocent people." She banged her gavel. "We're adjourned." The courtroom erupted in applause. Barbara and I hugged, both of us sobbing with relief and joy. Agent Torres came over and shook our hands. "You two did this," she said. "You stood up when everyone else was too scared. You saved 17 families from losing everything. You should be proud." Outside the courthouse, reporters wanted interviews. Barbara and I gave a joint statement, standing together on the courthouse steps. "We want other people to know that you don't have to accept being victimized," Barbara said, her red blazer bright in the winter sun. "When someone tries to take what's yours through intimidation and fraud, you fight back. You document everything. You report it to the authorities. You don't give up. And you don't fight alone," I added. Barbara stood with me when she didn't have to. Our neighbors supported us. The FBI believed us. Justice is possible, but sometimes you have to fight for it. 6 months later, Barbara officially retired as HOA president. We threw her a huge party in the neighborhood park. Almost everyone in the community came. People gave speeches about how she'd protected us all, how she'd stood up to corruption, how she'd shown what real leadership looked like. Barbara stood up to speak, wearing her beloved red blazer one last time in an official capacity. "I'm not a hero," Barbara said, her voice warm. "I'm just a neighbor who saw another neighbor in trouble and decided to help. That's what community means. We look out for each other. We protect each other. And when someone tries to hurt one of us, we all stand together." She raised her glass. "To Riverside Heights, the best neighborhood in Colorado, not because of the houses, but because of the people in them." Everyone cheered and clinked glasses. As for our family, we're still in our house. The same house Karen Westbrook tried to steal. The same house Patricia threatened us to get. The same house that we fought so hard to keep. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I sit on our front porch and look at our yard, the trees we planted, the garden we tend, the home we've built, and I think about how close we came to losing it all. But we didn't lose it. We fought. We stood firm. And we won. Karen Westbrook is currently serving her sentence at FCI Waseca in Minnesota. Eric is at FCI Inglewood in Colorado. Patricia is at FCI Danbury in Connecticut. They'll all be in prison for many years to come. As for Barbara, she's living her dream retirement gardening, reading mystery novels, and occasionally joining Tom and me for dinner. She's become like family to us. Last week, my daughter Emma asked me if we'd ever consider selling the house and moving somewhere new. I thought about it for a moment. You know what? Primera tolher. This house is worth more than any amount of money someone could offer. It's where you and your brother grew up. It's where we've built our life. It's where we learned that some things are worth fighting for. Emma smiled. "So we're staying. We're staying," I confirmed. "This is our home, and nobody's ever going to take it from us again." Thanks to this case, Colorado passed new legislation making HOA fraud and manufactured violations a specific crime with serious penalties. The Riverside Heights Protection Act ensures that other families won't face what we did. And that might be the most satisfying victory of all, knowing that our fight helped protect others. What did you think of this story? Have you ever dealt with HOA drama or difficult neighbors? Share your experiences in the comments below. And remember, if someone's trying to force you out of your home, document everything and contact the authorities. You have rights. You have power. And you don't have to fight alone. Justice served.